I always start off by painting the back of the aquariums or terrariums that I want to use as nice display pieces. This time I did something a bit different though. Instead of using the brush to paint on the paint, I used it to more dab it on, spreading it over the entire surface to create a purposefully ruffled environment. After ripping the tape off, doing it with some speed always helps to get a clean pull. It's time to start building the false bottom for the terrarium. First, I just add in some fine aquarium gravel in there. This is going to act as the majority of the base for it. The false bottom serves a couple of purposes, mainly so that if you do end up overwatering or adding too much moisture into the terrarium, then it can soak into the gravel and permeate there instead of absorbing into the substrate, which could create an anaerobic environment. I'm also adding in some activated horticultural charcoal to prevent this issue as well. When I'm all finished with the false bottom, I start adding in the terrarium soil. My terrarium soil is made from a mix of activated charcoal, tree fern fibers, cocoa fibers, orchid bark, as well as a little bit of sphagnum moss and sand. Finally, I start getting the hardscape in there. A lot of times I like to do a bit of a complicated setup with a bunch of rocks, different stones in there, some trees and twigs. This time though, I added the first piece of Oko Dragonstone, and I decided that I just loved the way it looked. The simplicity speaks for itself. I did do a small edit once I had added in a bit more soil, just trying to get the stone raised up. Now that the hardscape is in place, I finish off the terrarium substrate by just adding a bit more in the back, and then spreading out some natural fertilizer on the top layer of it. I get it mixed into the soil, and it's time for the planting. First plants I add into the terrarium are going to be all the different jewel orchids. I have 4 different species that I'm adding in here, trying to keep them isolated into 2 separate spots so it can look like a nice little grove. These are all cuttings that I'm planting today, so it's really important to make sure that they're not only in the substrate deep enough, but the substrate has also come and packed around it as well so that there's contact and it can grow new roots. Next thing I'm adding in are a couple of little clumps of Bucephalandra. These guys are normally an aquarium plant that I use, but I find they grow really nicely in certain terrarium environments as well. The first background plant that I'm going to be adding in is some Ophigoon pusillus. The main centerpiece plants in this terrarium are going to be a piece of red fern begonia as well as some lizard begonia. I only have one piece of the red fern begonia, but thankfully I have a bunch of the lizard begonia that I can spread out through the background. After getting the last centerpiece plant added in, it's time to add in some details. I'm using mainly Photonia for the detail plants. Different species and color variations of these will add them to grow really well and beautifully, but all at the same rate so they won't be overcrowding each other too much. The final detail plants that I'm adding in are going to be some Ficus Panama, oak leaf creeping fig, as well as a couple of sprigs of string of turtles. The last step for the planting is going to be adding in moss. These aren't any specific species or types of moss, I just have some growing that I've collected over the years, mixed with each other, kept solo, and grown in different environments. To finish up the terrarium, I get some moisture added in there, using the water to get the sides of the aquarium all nice and clean. The last step is just adding in some springtails. These guys are little insects that'll go around eating any decaying plant matter and keeping everything fresh for the future. Three days later, and all I really want to do is add in some more springtails to keep that colony healthy and a little bit more moisture for the plants. A week in, I'm noticing the first small problem. There are some insects that I didn't put in there. After a bit of research, I learned that they are called soil mites, and while all the plants are doing well, they shouldn't affect that. Springtails that are in there should consume them as well because they're a natural predator, so all I do is clean off the glass a little bit in hopes to help the springtails along in that process. So then I add in the water back that I had taken away cleaning the glass, get the lid on, and it's ready for another week. 2 weeks in, you can see that the soil mites are still hanging around. I clean off the glass again because that's where they seem to be really enjoying living. Since springtails are a predator of theirs, I decide to add some more in since they can't hurt the terrarium or the plants at all. At day 21, I decide to do something a little bit drastic. I cut back the red fern begonia. I'm only doing this because it's shading out some of the stuff below it, and I like how plants look more when they're growing in their home versus being added into a home. I can't find anywhere in there that's a good home for the new cutting of begonia, so all I do is add a little bit more water in there, throw the lid back on, and it's ready for another week. At day 28, it's been a while since I've had the terrarium in my possession, so I can make some choices with what I want to do for the planting. I clean off the glass, and where I tried adding that red fern begonia cutting, I add a few sprigs of Photonia albavenus white. At day 28, this is also when you start to see all the new growth really kicking in. The jewel orchids and Photonias are doing well, I have new sprigs of moss growing, and even the little pieces of Bucephalandra look amazing. At day 35, and with how everything is looking in there, I think I can call this terrarium finished. I clean off the inside of the glass for the last time in a little while, spray it down with aquarium glass cleaner around the outside and get that cleaned off as well. Finally, add in a little bit more fertilizer since it's been treating the plants so well, and go in for a last little tour. The pieces of begonia have rooted and started to grow in, as well as the jewel orchid cuttings are all putting out new leaves. Even the red fern begonia is putting out new growth where it's been cut. The vining plants like Ficus pumila corsifolia as well as Ficus panama have all been putting out consistent new growth, and even in this humid environment, the string of turtles is looking great. The final step for the terrarium is just adding in more water, making sure the moisture content is a healthy level for all the plants in there so they can continue to grow and thrive. And finally, we can see a difference between day 1 and what day 35 looks like. This isn't the most dramatic growth, and I've even taken some of the begonia away, but my goodness do I have dreams for the future of this terrarium, and is it going to look absolutely beautiful.